Hello everybody, my name's Richard Watson, and of course this is Anglais, the easy way. I have a question for you. In fact, I have several questions for you. Have you ever wondered what you would do if you saw something that was really, really difficult to believe? When you have trouble believing your own eyes? Even if you saw it really, really clearly, how could you ever convince someone else that you really saw it and that it was true? I think the question would be, would you even try to talk about it, or would you just keep it to yourself, knowing that nobody would believe you? If you saw a wild horse, maybe you would talk about it, but people would probably think it just escaped or something. If you saw a fox, that's okay here in Europe, but it would be a lot stranger in New Zealand because we don't have foxes, and people would probably think you just saw a dog. If you saw a wolf, you might end up thinking it was a big dog, and even if you were sure that it was a wolf, probably most people you told would think it was a dog as well. Okay, what about if you saw a panther? You'd probably call the police and tell them it escaped from the zoo or something. People might believe you, but it's unlikely. Okay, imagine going home and telling your friends that you saw an elephant in the forest here in France. That would be a hard one for people to believe. Now, I think you can see what I'm getting at. At some point, we switch from believing to not believing. Try telling your friends that you saw a giant in the forest. Imagine you're driving through a forest and you see a unicorn or a troll. I don't mean an internet troll. I mean like a real green troll. Now, I guess the world is full of people who see ghosts or spirits or demons or things like that. Some people talk about energy, healing energy, positive energy. Human history and the human condition is full of revelation, curses and blessings, and magic and spells. We feel quite isolated from this in our modern life, with our electricity and computers and machines that are so functional and so reliable. If you live in a big city like Paris or London or Tokyo, you probably have street lights on all night, and it's never really dark. But if you go out into the wild, into untamed nature, into a dark forest where there's no sign of our civilization, you would be surprised how quickly you can become superstitious and fearful. That's when the balance between good and bad, dangerous and beneficial, between natural and unnatural, starts to become more important and more blurred. If you think about the vast reach of human history and culture, we often see these things play out. We talk about good and evil, tyranny and human flourishing, and humanity's place in the world. Now, I know that sounds really serious, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking about a film. And it's not a film about armies and wars and victory and defeat. It's a film about a small group of men. The film's called The Green Mile, and I suppose a lot of you have already seen this film. I would suggest you go back and watch it again. The Green Mile is from 1999, and they call it an American fantasy drama film by the director Frank Darabont, based on a Stephen King novel. If you haven't seen it, Tom Hanks plays a guy called Paul Edgecombe, who's a prison guard on the death row during the Great Depression, and he witnesses supernatural events when a mysterious new prisoner called John Coffey comes to his prison. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for you. The film is a bit violent. I mean, it's about a prison in the 1930s on death row, but it's also a feel-good movie in a way. There's a lot of positive messages and powerful moments. And if you haven't seen it, you're really in for a treat. The director said that the character of John Coffey, and I quote, represents those extraordinary, visionary souls that come along in human history from time to time, that the rest of us feel compelled to exterminate. I've always found it extraordinary that we can't seem to accept the message of peace and love. It's not such a crackpot notion. Crackpot means crazy. It's not such a crackpot notion. But whenever somebody comes along who embodies that notion, we have to nail him to a cross. We have to shoot him. We have to kill him. Michael Clark Duncan, who plays this mysterious man, said, John Coffey stands for everything that is right in the world. If you see an old lady crossing the street and you go over to help her, to me, that's John Coffey. John Coffey stands for everything that is good about the earth. Of course, I feel quite isolated from fairy tales with stories about wolves and giants and elves. Yeah, I agree, that seems very distant for us now. But that's mostly because we don't live in forests with wolves anymore. That's why we like these types of films where something unexplained or something mysterious happens in normal life. It seems more powerful in a way. But remember, fairy tales were normal life when they were made. If you look at so many films that are popular now, it's about something unexplained in our modern life. Vampires, zombies, and superheroes. Not in some far-off ancient time, but in today's modern world among us. That's what resonates with us now. The fact that this film is so close to modern life and so realistic in so many ways, that's what makes it so powerful. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, go and enjoy. I'm envious of you that you haven't seen it. And I think I'm going to stop there. I'll catch you next week. Don't forget to subscribe.